I caught my dad cheating on my mom for the 5th time in a row, and after dealing with this 4 previous times in my life, I'm now contemplating if I should even tell my mom in the first place, since she seems very apathetic about the situation as a whole. Here's what happened. So yes, I know what you're thinking. As the title states, this is the 5th time I caught my dad cheating on my mom, and honestly, I think at this point I really have lost count, and I really think my mom is just over it at this point. The first time was rough, and I even went out of my way messaging my dad's mistress and going off on her. They had to go to counseling with a pastor, but it clearly didn't help. The second time, I caught my dad again. I kept seeing a name pop up on his phone, and it was someone that I didn't know. So I cried to my mom, but she was more concerned with how I felt. She was shocked by this, but her seeing me cry, I guess made her realize that she's not the only one being hurt by this. The third time was just like the second time. Another name popped up, I told my mom, and she shrugged it off, and literally said, well, as long as he's doing his fatherly duties. The 4th time came along and my mom still didn't care. Well, the 5th time was recently. My dad's been on his phone more often than usual, and a woman who we will call Vanessa keeps popping up. And here's the thing, I don't know of Vanessa. My dad even showered in the middle of the day today, which is something he never does. I got home from a day out and he was not home. I called him and I asked where he was, but he just said he was somewhere. But meanwhile, it's 9:00 p.m. on a Friday. I mean, he's the definition of lazy. He hates going out, and yet he's out on a Friday night. But he just kept saying that he's somewhere, and that's when I knew. So I asked my brother to call him, and he said the same thing. He said, oh, I'm somewhere, why are you asking? And at this point, we both knew what was going on. So should I tell my mom? My brother and I both know that she's not going to do anything about it. They have zero love towards each other, and they are honestly just roommates at this point. And if she does do anything, she's gonna ask him what's going on, and he's gonna say no or make a joke about him cheating just to overthrow the fact that he is. And he's gonna storm away because he got caught and no one's gonna talk to each other for about a week or 2. What should I do? Wow, your dad's a horrible person. I can pretty much say that confidently. He's cheating on his wife actively, and he's done it, what, 5 times that you know about? Like, that is crazy to me, because you and your mom absolutely do not deserve that. Your brother does not deserve that. Like, he clearly just doesn't care about anything going on in this family. He doesn't care that he's ruining your life and your mother's life, and he's taking away so much happiness that all of you could be enjoying. So to that end, I'm really sorry that you're dealing with this. But if I was in your shoes, and I can only speak for myself, I would not only tell my mom that yes, dad's cheating on you again, but I would also tell my dad and be like, hey, the way you're treating mom is awful. This is incredibly disrespectful, and I can't believe that you're doing this again. Like, this guy is a massive coward, and he's such a terrible father, because what he's doing is unacceptable, and you and your family deserve so much better than this. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My parents have changed dramatically after the pandemic, becoming lazy and spiteful people, even though I've tried to step in and help them in various ways. And now I feel like I'm at such a loss and I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, for the last 5 to 10 years, my parents have simply stopped living their lives for like no reason. They've never really had friends, simply because they like doing their own thing, and I totally respect that. But for about the last 10 years, they have had no one in their lives. My mother got the absolute fear of God put into her during the pandemic, and not long before the pandemic, she discovered from a doctor that she has an artery disease from smoking for the better part of 40 years. She has become pretty much agoraphobic, and everything has to be delivered to the house. I mean, you can see the sign of the store from her backyard, but it still has to be delivered. And she still won't go out to meet the delivery driver either. Whether it's groceries, lunch, dinner, odds and ends, or even like medications, all of it has to be delivered. And I just don't know how she is continuing to operate for almost 4 years like this. One of her main reasons for not meeting people in person and going into stores anymore is her saying that she's not dressed up for all that. But when you look at her, she's dressed completely normal. She thinks that she has to get all dressed up just to run into Walmart or something like that for what, 5 minutes? They also needed someone to do a little yard work back in the spring. It was just mowing the grass and trimming the bushes. It was nothing serious. My mother forces me to be at home when he shows up so that I can be the one to talk to the guy. And the whole time she's watching me talk to him through the glass door. When I step back into the house to tell her what he said, she retreats deep into the house to talk to me. She says to me, "He didn't see me watching through the door, did he?" And I just told her, "Mom, you're standing 10 feet away from us while standing in plain view of us. And you're watching while on the phone with Dad. Yes, of course he saw you." Well, she then said that this is one of the reasons she didn't want to hire him. Now, because the last doctor discovered that she had peripheral artery disease, she refuses to see a doctor for anything now. And instead, it always now has to be via the telephone. And if that doctor over the phone didn't tell her exactly what she wanted to hear, then she would just find another. It's exhausting trying to explain very basic medical things to her, such as trying to explain to her that antibiotics don't work on viruses and things of that nature. She's one of those people who will stop taking her antibiotics 3 days before they run out so that she has more for later so that she can take them the next time she gets sick without having to go to the doctor. She simply doesn't understand why that is so dangerous. She's one of those people that when she gets a new medication, the first thing that she does is read all of the side effects to know how bad it's going to get for her. And she does other stuff similar to this nonsense all the time. And the thing is, she never did this while I was growing up or even in my 20s. Both of my parents have also completely stopped solving problems in a logical manner. Take a medical problem that I'm currently having for an example. There is a bit of communication error between my doctor's office and the specialist he wants me to see. My main doctor's office won't call me back for the better part of 3 weeks. So I call my main doctor's office for the 4th time today to speak to the office manager just so I can finally get this all fixed. And when I tell my mom about this, she freaks out on me. I literally say to her, "Hey, so I finally talked to the office manager." And she responds frantic, saying to me, "Why would you do that?" I looked at her and I said, "Because the problem is now fixed." And I explained that I now know who I'm seeing and where I need to go. Well, my mom rolled her eyes. She said, "Oh my God, you just need to let this go." And she said this as if she's tired of hearing about it. I said to her, "No, I'm still having symptoms after 3 weeks. I need to see the specialist and now I can do that." Well, my mom just let out a frustrated sigh, but I continued and said, "I think I have IBS, Mom. I need to see the specialist. These symptoms should not be lasting this long." Now, she finally did let it go, but she seemed extremely reluctant to do so. She also just doesn't pay attention to the world around her anymore. I mean, she is just completely clueless now. And my mom was never the most active person ever, but she didn't just sit at home 24/7 and get dumber by the day either. Now, my dad is also in the same boat where he literally just won't solve any problems. We thought the upstairs AC was going out a few days ago, and I told both of my parents that I would help them make the calls and stuff like that just to try and get it looked into. Well, this became a huge thing all of a sudden. Both of my parents started screaming, "Oh my God," especially when they hear the AC slowing down just a little bit. Now, what's my dad's solution to this? He moves about a shovel full of yard debris from around the AC unit, and that's literally it. That's his entire solution. Meanwhile, we're dealing with 100-degree heat. They literally just refuse to have anyone come out and check on the unit. It is so confusing. They also have some of those ceiling fans in the house that are remote controlled. One of these fans is in their bedroom, and they lost the remotes for both of the ceiling fans, and they just don't even care. And now they just won't use the fan or the light in their bedroom, and they have no interest in getting it to work even though their bedroom is really dark. They also have some plumbing problems in the house that is literally just caused by the caulk around the spigot head in the bathtub and a sink. And guess what? They won't get that fixed either. And it's been like that for several years. I'm pretty sure one of them is leaking through a wall, and it's making a small soft spot on the hardwood floor in the downstairs hallway. And yet still, they won't even consider fixing it. If I offer to grab a thing of caulk and see what I can do, it then becomes a huge thing again that I tried to fix a problem. But this soft spot has been going on for years at this point. And this is just the more major stuff that I can think of off the top of my head. They both still work with my mom working from home, and my dad is an absolute physical specimen, and he is in great shape and sees his doctor regularly. But my mom has spiraled out of control since the last few months before the pandemic, and she just refuses to do anything at all, and she is now getting insanely lazy. And I just have to say, these are not my parents. I understand that they like to sit around and relax. I mean, I do too, but at least I take things seriously that should be taken seriously. I also solve problems when they need to be solved, instead of waiting for years to do something about a problem. I just don't know what to do about them or how to help them anymore. Should I just take a step back and let them figure this out on their own? What should I do? Wow, this is really disappointing to hear, because it seems like, at least according to the original poster, their parents have always been like very motivated people, and they've worked hard to get things done for the most part, or at least at the bare minimum that anyone else would do. But now that they're 64 years old, they've just kind of like given up on everything, and then anytime you try to solve the problem, they freak out on you. Like, that's really weird behavior, and I'm honestly so sorry you're dealing with that. So hopefully there's some way this can turn around, because what you described sounds incredibly sad and very frustrating. Am I the jerk for refusing to financially support my sister after she decided to become a single mother? Here's what happened. I'm a 32-year-old male, and I have a sister who's 34 who we will call Emily for the sake of the story, and she has always wanted to be a mother, but unfortunately she was not able to find the right partner. After years of waiting, I suggested that she try IVF treatment. I even helped her research the process and find some clinics. She loved the idea and decided to go ahead with it. Now, Emily had the financial means to afford IVF on her their own, but it meant that she had to cut back on creature comforts and luxuries for the foreseeable future. 2 months ago, after her 4th round of treatment, she finally got pregnant. The whole family is very happy for her, and she's happy as well. She didn't expect it to take so many rounds of treatment though, so the bill ended up higher than she was prepared for. She does have enough money to support herself, but not very comfortably. She asked our family for help so she wouldn't have to make even more sacrifices. Our parents are retired and living on a fixed income, so they really can't contribute much, so this leaves me as her main source of potential financial support. Last week, Emily sat me down and asked me for money, and I have no issues with people choosing to be single parents if they can afford it, but I don't believe it's fair to ask others to finance such a personal choice, especially when there are significant long-term financial commitments involved. I have a wife and a newborn son. While we do have some extra money, we are using it to keep our own little family comfortable and save up for a bigger house. And for reference, we're currently living in a single-bedroom condo. I told Emily that I would not be able to help foot the bill, and Emily was heartbroken and furious. She argued that family is supposed to support each other and that I'm being selfish and judgmental. Our parents are also upset with me, saying that I'm not being a good brother. They think I should help her because she's family and that this is her dream. They're also especially upset because it was my idea and I helped her research it. I offered to help Emily by letting her eat dinner with us nightly since she does live nearby, and letting her use my car, which is cheaper to run since it is electric. But she said that's not nearly enough. I have my own family to think about, and I've got my own financial goals to achieve. I feel it is unreasonable to put myself in a difficult financial position for something that is Emily's personal choice, even if I did initially suggest it. Now, it's also important to know that my sister is a homeowner with a slightly bigger house than mine and makes slightly more money than I do. She can absolutely afford a child. She took from her savings to pay for the 4th round of IVF and is rebuilding it as fast as possible by not spending. It isn't like she didn't budget, she just doesn't like being frugal. So am I the jerk for not wanting to support her financially? What should I do? No, you're not the jerk in this situation. Emily is being incredibly selfish and is basically trying to guilt trip you for a personal decision that she made. The fact that your parents also were like, oh, you've got to help her out, that's her dream. Like, that's a really silly thing to say if you think about it. Like, this is a human being that she's supposed to be taking care of. And this is something that she willingly took upon herself, despite anything they tried to pin on the original poster. Like, he didn't force her to get into this. He was just trying to be nice and help her out. Like, for them to be like, oh yeah, you're in on this too. Or even like imply for a second that he's also responsible. Like, that is insane in my opinion, and that is not okay. So no, you're definitely not the jerk, because it sounds like your sister is well off as it is, and she absolutely can afford this. A group of entitled jerks in an emergency room get angry and furious when my mom goes ahead of them after having a stroke, claiming that they had been waiting for hours and that she did not deserve any kind of special treatment. And I'm honestly still blown away by this level of entitlement. Here's what happened. So 2 years ago, my mom had the first of 2 strokes that left her disabled and eventually led to her death 19 months later. She complained of a headache for a few days and asked about going to the ER, but she said it was getting better. But the next morning, she displayed symptoms like she had with the previous stroke. She was confused and had a shuffling gait, and it was honestly not the usual symptoms, but I kind of knew what was going on. Since an ambulance would take her to the worst hospital in the county, I convinced her to get in an Uber with me to go to the doctor's office. But in reality, I was taking her to the ER because I knew she would refuse to go if I said that. By the time we got to the ER, I knew they would treat her well, but she was also having trouble walking, so I grabbed a wheelchair and I wheeled her in. I told the front desk her information and that she was having the symptoms of a stroke. Then we went to go sit down in the waiting room. About 3 minutes later, a nurse came out and took us straight back to a room. Well, apparently there was a lot of grumbling from the others in the waiting room, which I was too stressed to notice in the first place. A friend was coming to meet us and she had to sit in the waiting room for a few minutes, and she shared with me the rest of what happened. She arrived about 10 minutes after we were taken back and walked into hearing people complaining amongst themselves. Eventually, people were going up to the desk angry, saying that it was unfair that some of them had waited for hours and that my mom had gotten special treatment. I guess some of them even raised their voices because the nurse who had gotten my mom heard them from the triage room and stormed out into the waiting room. He started outright yelling at everybody, literally talking about how people are seen in order of who is sickest, and that this woman who was taken back right away had a stroke, and there was a very limited amount of time to save her life. A few people tried to keep complaining, and he yelled again that anyone unhappy about it could walk right out the door and go to any of the other dozen hospitals in the metro area. He then called a security officer down to make sure no one started any further issues. So the moral of the story is that if you go to an ER and they make you wait, just be thankful, because it likely likely means that you're not going to end up disabled or dead. Wow, that is crazy to me. Imagine sitting in the ER room and being like, wow, that person who had a stroke, I deserve to go in front of them. It's like, are you that selfish that you would rather have somebody pass away instead of, I don't know, allowing people to go in the order of who's sickest? Because that nurse makes a fantastic point. They have to go in the order of who's really in need of their help. Like, this is the emergency room after all. So yeah, that kind of behavior really blows my mind, because I can't imagine being that entitled that you would demand to go in front of somebody who clearly could have passed away if they waited any longer. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.